So that they?
So that patients can easily find their way.
Okay. So those two amendments are noted. Anybody else have any comments on the minutes? Mr. Gorman?
Just that I was absent for that meeting, so let the record state that I will not be voting on the minutes.
Fair enough. Okay. With no more comments on the minutes or addendums or adjustments, do I have a motion to approve them as amended?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So moved. Is there a second? Seconded. Mr. Clough, thank you. All those in favor of approving the minutes from, forgot the date already.
November 6th.
Thank you. Raise your right hand. It's unanimous except for Mr. Gorman, who's abstaining. So the minutes are approved. As I mentioned a moment ago, we don't have any unfinished business tonight, so we'll proceed right to ZBA 2325. Mr. Hagan, do you want to give us the briefing on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 706 Court Street, zoned low density, lot size is 0.63 acres, which is about roughly 27,402 square feet. Non-conforming 3-unit residential building. The living space that we have on record is 2,148 square feet. There are no ZBA decisions found on record.
Can you give me that square footage number again, please?
Which ones?
2184, I thought you said?
2148 for
48.
living space.
I guess I'm hearing in a dyslexic fashion.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
For clarity, that wasn't 706 Court Street, it's
Thank you.
706 Main Street.
Thank you.
So noted, 706 Main, very good. This is 2325. All right. Anything further?
Nothing further.
Okay, I'll read the introduction. Petitioner is 706 Main Street, owner LP of Newark, Delaware, represented by Jeffrey Christensen, Esquire of Cleveland Waters and Baths of Concord, New Hampshire, who requests an enlargement of an expansion of a non-conforming use for property located at 706 Main Street, tax map 120-019-000, which is in the low-density district. The petitioner requests to expand or enlarge the pre-existing non-conforming 3-unit multifamily use to add 2 additional dwelling units per Articles 18.2 and 25.7 of the zoning regulations. Ms. Taylor? Oh, go ahead. Mr. Hagan, I think Attorney Taylor has a question for you.
Yeah, could you clarify for me the pre-existing non-conforming use? Because my understanding, and I probably didn't cross-reference everything, is that in the low density, a 3-family multi-unit is permitted.
That is not correct. In low-density, single-family, I do have the intent of the low-density district if you'd like me to read it for you, but it's single-family is the only, is allowed for residential, and as well as ADU.
Okay, I guess what confused me, maybe I'm looking at the wrong low-density district.
There may be some clarification. So it is listed under the permitted uses with a CRD. A CRD is a conservation residential development. They're big lots of land that are allowed to be divided up into a conservation residential development. Only in that.
So is this non-conforming because it existed prior to putting that CRD requirement there?
No. So there are certain lot sizes in order to qualify for a CRD. The minimum lot size, and I'm going to talk off the top of my head, is, I believe, 1 or 2 acres required for low density to qualify for a CRD.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr.
Just
Rogers,
for some
please.
clarity, if Attorney Taylor would look, if it's the table 3.3.5 is the permitted uses that are within that district, right at the top of the residential where it says dwelling single family. Again, that's the only residential use that's allowed in this district. CRD is a separate overlay district that has different, and this is not allowed, this is not a CRD of any way. This was a pre-existing use that happened before zoning changes.
Okay, so it's pre-existing before the CRD requirement went into effect?
And the CRD is something totally different. We're looking at this just as a low density. This property would not qualify for a CRD in any way
Because of
or
lot
any
size?
sense. For a lot, like I say, this predates the CRD. This was a three-family
Yeah, so-
well before a CRD
okay,
was
well-
ever even developed.
Well, I think that's answers my question, because
Okay.
it doesn't, the CRD came after it existed.
Exactly, yes, that
Okay.
is correct. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that. Mr. Christensen, are you prepared to go?
Yes, thank
Please
you.
proceed then. Thank you.
So as mentioned, my name is Jeffrey Christensen. I represent the owner, 706 Main Street, owner LP. With me is Manny Pellegrino, the principal. His wife, Leslie Pellegrino, also the principal, are here with me. They can answer any questions about the specifics of the property that I don't have off the top of my head. As mentioned, this is a pre-existing non-conforming lot. It predates not only the CRD, but also the zoning ordinance as a whole. It is a 3-unit multifamily in the primary building that you see on the screen in front of you. As you can see, it's a fairly oddly shaped lot. The building has an attached garage that, depending on how you're looking at it, is sort of on the right side of that building, near the edge of the hockey stick, as it were. The proposal before you is to put 2 additional dwelling units in that attached barn that is not currently really being used for anything. There is enough parking area because of the large size of that lot. There's enough parking for 10 parking spots. So that would be 2 parking spots per unit. There is a parking plan that has been submitted with our application that shows where those are. But because this is a pre-existing non-conforming lot, in order to expand the number of dwelling units, we do need the approval pursuant to section 18.2 and 25.7, which are interrelated. Broadly speaking, this is a net benefit without any burden to the area. There's no changes to the footprint of the building. There's no changes to the exterior other than some cosmetic changes as they redo that attached barn. But from the point of view of something like overcrowding, there really isn't going to be any impact. This uses existing buildings to add to the housing supply without adding any new structures, no additional encroachment into setbacks, no overcrowding of the land. All of the changes to this property are going to be primarily to the interior, where they won't affect anybody but the residents. The parking is on a gravel driveway, so the expanded parking is not going to add any problems for water, runoff, drainage. It's pervious surface. To the specific elements of the approval, the first being, will this reduce the value of surrounding properties? Is it going to add some obnoxious or injurious or offensive use? It won't, because the use is already there. It's already a multifamily. There haven't been any issues with it being a multifamily. There's no reason that adding 2 additional units to the otherwise unused space would suddenly create some new harm to the area that didn't exist before. It's going to be a continuation of that use. It's certainly in an area of town that can support that, in that sort of downtown Main Street area. You're adding housing units to an area that can support that and can accommodate it, taking the burden off of the more rural parts of town. So there's no reason that this would reduce property values. There is a nearby condo association that's much larger than this. This won't alter the essential character of the neighborhood at all. Likewise, there'll be no nuisance to vehicles or pedestrians. As I mentioned before, there's plenty of parking, plenty of space for parking. There could be even more space for parking, and this will have to go through site plan approval with the planning board to hammer out some of those details. But all of that means that there won't need to be any burden on anything off the property. No street parking, no parking off the property. There's plenty of space exactly where it is. And given that it is already being used as a multifamily without any hazard to pedestrians or traffic, Again, there's no reason that this would create some new hazard. The location where it is, again, you're putting traffic in an area that can accommodate traffic. You're keeping the increase of traffic out of otherwise rural neighborhoods where such a use might not be as suitable. And finally, as to the adequate facilities, this property is already on municipal utilities, water, sewer. The expanded dwellings will also be on municipal utilities, so there won't be any change there. All this will do is effectively add to the tax base without adding to the physical burden on the land and in the city. Given where it is, there won't be any undue burden on other municipal services like emergency response. It's right downtown. This won't be a problem for anything. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you. Attorney Taylor?
I have a question which maybe is for staff, and I should have asked it earlier, which is, I noticed on the application that the coverage area is blank, so could you tell me what I know the building isn't changing, but you've got additional parking area, and I thought that gravel was impervious, not pervious.
Gravel would cover under impervious,
Yeah.
under pervious, and part of that review would be done under the planning board as far as under that planning board review, all of those numbers will be provided. The minimum requirements for setbacks, parking, coverage, they may have to adjust to accommodate for that. But it will be reviewed under the site plan review.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just to
Yes.
make sure that was, I think Mike flipped the words. Gravel would be an impervious surface when it's put down correctly as for travel lanes and parking spaces. It would be considered impervious. And it absolutely, as Michael said, that it would be reviewed it would have to go through the planning, whether it needs to go to the planning board or the minor project committee is a different story. But either way, it would be reviewed for the actual lot coverage, which in the low density, you have a impervious coverage of 45%. So there's 45% of that lot could be covered between the building and the impervious surfaces.
Okay, so the fact that there's additional parking surface there,
I would just
Where
make
does that come
I would
in?
just make note that again, it says that it's proposed parking. So prior to with this additional units and such, there would be planning approval that would have to occur, and the applicant would have to provide those percentage numbers for review at that time.
Yeah.
And if need be, would have to be back before this board for lot coverage if it came to find out they could not provide the 10 parking spaces and/or cannot meet the impervious coverage. They would have to come back before this board.
There are options for pervious paving that could also satisfy that if it becomes an issue, but if you look at the property, it's plenty of space right now.
it
We
would
don't
have
foresee
been
that being
helpful
a
to have
problem.
that in the application. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Yes.
We do have a requirement here that it has to have the proper facilities in there as well, and we're moving from a 3 to a 5 unit. Is sewer something that's covered in here? Would that also be going into the planning review?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
There is a requirement for us that they have proper facilities, and one of those is the sewer and water hookup for this, and moving from a 3 to a 5. Is that something that's reviewed during the planning, or is it something that's brought up in here?
No, that would be reviewed in the planning process.
Anybody else? I just have one, I think, Mr. Christensen. Can you tell me a little bit about the units? How many rooms will be in the units? How many people will live in there?
Are you talking about the
new units.
the two new units?
Yes.
I'll leave that to Manny.
The plan is to have them be 2-bedroom units, somewhere around 700 to 850 square feet.
Okay. And refresh my recollection, is that consistent with the three that are there?
The 3 that are there, I think the larger unit downstairs is around 1,100 square feet.
Okay.
The other ones are closer to that range, around 700 to 800, yes.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Does anybody have any further questions of the applicant? Seeing none, we'll turn it over to the public. And we'll go first to any public comments that may be opposed to the application. We'll take that up first. Does anybody fit into that category? Seeing none, are there any public comments in support of the application? Seeing none. If the board has no other questions, we'll close the public hearing and go to deliberations. Okay? Who would like to start? Attorney Taylor.
Well, looking at the standards, first one would not reduce the value of property or be otherwise injurious, obnoxious, or offensive to the neighborhood. I know I've driven past that many, many times, and it's fairly secluded. I mean, it's not something that's, you know, in your face as you drive by it. So I would suggest that there's probably nothing that would be injurious, obnoxious, or offensive to the neighborhood. It's set back from the road, it's set back from the surrounding development, and if anything, it will increase value just by the way our tax structure works.
I think I agree with that. Certainly it's secluded, and certainly it's a large enough lot to accommodate 2 extra units of the modest size described, so I would agree that factor 1 is met. And along a similar vein, I think it follows that I don't see any basis for finding that there's a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians. There's, according to the plan here, it's easy in, easy out, and from the parking area to the South Main Street access road. I don't see a particular issue with getting onto that road, although sometimes it's crowded with traffic, but that would be true on every lot along that street, so I don't find that the second criterion is a problem either. Mr. Gorman?
Yeah, I would agree with what both of you said about criteria number 1 and 2. I also would state on number 3, relative to adequate facilities, it's on a road that is well-traveled and busy, so I think the facility, so to speak, is fine, and the water, sewer, and utilities clearly will be adequate, given that they're municipal. I think that this is a perfect location for an expansion of this type of use, especially given that the structure already exists. And we, as was stated by the applicant, we do have a void for housing that we need to try and fill, and we need to try and do it wisely, which I think this is a perfect opportunity to do.
And to the extent 2 new units take the pressure off of more rural areas, I think that's a point well taken, so,
Yep.
which I believe the attorney made, so, okay. Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, I just would add, as far as the, you know, safety and the facilities, that going from 3 to 5, it probably puts it in different areas for building code, et cetera. But that's something that's going to be reviewed. So if, you know, suddenly they have to be sprinklered or whatever, that's beyond our purview.
All right, anybody want to entertain a motion? Mr. Gorman?
I'll make a motion to approve, hang right on, ZBA 2325.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Clough, okay.
Excuse me? If only I knew how to silence it.
We'll manage, don't worry. With respect to the first criterion, the proposed use would not reduce the value of any property within the zoning district, nor otherwise be injurious, obnoxious, or offensive to the neighborhood. All those in favor of that? It's unanimous. I assume for the reasons we already discussed, so let's just be clear about that. There will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians. All those in favor of that? That's unanimous. Adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operation of the proposed use. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Now on the main motion to approve 2325, all those in favor? Again, it's unanimous. That application is approved.
Thank you very much.
Gentlemen.
Thanks.
The next application we'll take up is ZBA 2328, located at 28 Damon Court. If the applicants would like to take a seat at the table. Mr. Hagan, would you like to give us a briefing on this one?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Property 28 Damon Court, zoned high-density, lot size is .38 acres, approximately 16,552 square feet. It's a single-family home, again, approximately 1,607 square feet of living space, and there are no ZBA decisions found on record. One thing I want to note is in the advertisement, it said a 15-foot side setback. It's actually a 10-foot side setback required for this zone.
I think Corinne sent us an email on that, so yes,
Just
thank
wanted
you.
to clarify for the record.
Okay. Anything further?
Nothing further, Mr. Chair.
ZBA 2328, the petitioner Charles and April Weed request a variance for property located at 28 Damon Court, tax map 553-039-000, and this is in the high-density district. The petitioner requests the construction of an attached carport, 12 feet by 24 feet, that will extend approximately 1 foot from the property line, where 10 feet is required per Article 3.6.2 of the zoning regulations. All set? If there are no other comments from the board to the administration, I'll turn it over to the applicants for their presentation. Mr. Weed, or Mrs. Weed, whoever would like to proceed.
Thank you very much. I should have brought a lawyer.
There's enough of them here, don't worry.
Okay. No, our hope is to provide some safety and shelter for vehicles on our driveway that we have used for 30 years. We have a new roof that was done professionally and new flashing. We also insulated our attic, but it's still going to have ice falls. And last winter, 2 cars were damaged at the same time, 25th of February, from ice falls. And we hadn't been in New England for the 100 years that we needed to be really aware of that kind of danger, I guess. But anyway, the idea is that we wanted to continue to use that driveway, not to put any more impermeable surfaces on the property or any other structures. And so we think that the optimal way of doing it is with the carport. We have gone out for plans, I guess, with both a steel building and with Williams Construction Company. Haven't gotten an estimate back. I think we're going to be seeing them very soon. But we certainly didn't want to do anything before we had an approval. We will not change the footprint of the property at all. And I wish it were more than a foot from the edge of the driveway, but that's how it fits. And our neighbors seems to be delighted with the idea. He has a large side yard, which will absorb ice and snow, I would assume, always has. And there would be no change to their property, no effect on their property that I can visualize. I think probably it improves the value of our house a little bit, certainly the health and safety of the existing occupants. And I would assume therefore that in general, it's going to be improving the nature of the neighborhood. April, do you want to add anything, or?
Well, a question that would come to my mind if I were you is why now? And it all boils down to that new roof that we put on, I think, because we've never had problems with this driveway with snow coming down on cars. But then the brand-new roof, as a consequence, we had metal flashing put across the bottom. And boy, oh boy, we didn't see it coming. It just, and took out 2 cars. They weren't ours. They were our daughters and granddaughters, which made us feel extra bad. So
That's one way to keep the relatives from coming over.
well, if they hadn't, it would have been our cars.
Right.
Yeah. Furthermore, we are the proud winners of the New Hampshire Public Radio Car Raffle. So we have a brand new car that we would really like to keep safe. Not to mention people walking down the driveway.
There's a picture of it there.
Oh yeah, there's the new car right there.
In your application, it looks like, I don't know if you can see this from way back there, but this is on page 51 of 58. I don't know if that matters to you, but it shows a good picture of the roof and then the roof of the carport. Is that going to be a solid roof, or is it going to allow things to fall through it? Probably not, right?
It's going to be solid, and I've spoken with the metal fabrication people, and they said, well, it sounds to me like you need to have the highest standards possible for such a building. It's going to increase your cost a little bit, but they understand that ice and snow has some weight. But it will be solid.
Okay. And the right side here will be open?
Yes.
Okay.
Both the leaving side and the entering side will be open.
So 3 sides open?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the base of the carport, is that going to be solid or is that going to be gravel? Is it going to be a slab or is it going to be, I guess that's the better way to put it, a slab or gravel or some other surface down there?
We put in my wife put in 8 tons of hard pack this summer. And we've never had anything but hard pack on it before, so
Okay.
we just put it on there.
And
So-
I did do it all by myself.
And your husband didn't help?
No, he had a hip operation.
Oh, okay.
You know, he always plans his
excuse.
operations, times them carefully.
So the setback limitation, is it the roof line that brings you to the 1 foot part, or is it something else? The posts, for example?
I think the footings and the exterior posts would be within 1 foot
Okay,
of the property.
all right. Mr. Gorman?
So where would the overhang actually extend to? Because that would technically be what you should be applying for a setback. The furthermost point of the structure, meaning the roof overhangs over the posts. Do you have any idea of what that overhang is?
No. I think that has to do with the plans of the contractors that are looking at it.
I think technically we'd have to hear this for what it's going to be, right? If it's going to be 6 inches.
Well,
or-
to avoid any problems in the future, we should
Yeah.
be as close as possible, I suppose.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Hagan.
It would be up to the board to give a number so that when we issue a permit, we can base it off of that and base on that application.
Mr. Gorman?
I guess with that, I would have just a pretty basic question for the applicant. Given that you probably do want some sort of overhang, but you probably don't want to shrink this thing down to any smaller than it already is, what would you anticipate accomplishing your needs for 2 vehicles with an overhang? Would you be able to come within the foot, or would you be asking for more, do you think?
It's not, our cars would not be side by side. They would be, it's the one behind the other.
Okay,
And
Yeah.
that would leave plenty of room for that.
okay. So if you had to, you could put the post, say, 18 inches from the line with a 6-inch overhang?
I believe so.
Okay. So you'd be comfortable moving forward with a foot as the setback from the furthermost point of the structure?
I think so.
If I may, Mr. Chair, so
Mr. Rogers, yes.
just to be clear, so when we do the setbacks, we measure to the furthest point of the structure. So as the board is correctly interpreting, this 1 foot, when plans were submitted for a building permit, Michael would be looking at them, and he would be, if 1 foot is what were to be granted tonight, he would be looking to see that overhang is at 1 foot or more from the setback. So it is very important to make sure that that's clear, that that's where the measurement would be taken to, is the furthest point of the structure, which in this case, from that diagram in front of you, would be the drip edge.
Okay. And if I'm hearing the applicants correctly, they can live with the foot if we just,
Yep.
okay. All right, that's what I thought. Yes.
Great representation so far, but you've noted that the ice does slide off. Are you planning, or the contractor's planning on putting anything to help deflect it on the bottom or break it up a little bit? Or are you just going to have sheets of ice coming off
Are you talking about on the flashing?
onto your carport, sir? Any type of spikes or anything on the edge to help break them up, or?
That's a great idea.
Because as you're stating, your neighbor's fine with it, but may still be sheets of ice coming off that thing.
If the building permit or whatever makes that suggestion, I think that would be perfectly appropriate.
If I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
it would not be a requirement under the building code to have that. So it would be left up to the board to decide if that's what they feel is needed, that they can make that a stipulation, we can add it to the permit. But as far as a minimum code requirement, it would not be covered. It is in the ordinance to make sure that you make sure that water and snow doesn't go onto the other property. So that is a solution that could be put forward by the board or by the applicant.
If I may, I'm sorry.
The roof, I think, of the carport would be approximately 1210. So there would be a 2-foot drop between the house and the outer edge. So it isn't as steep as the roof above it, which has the ice falls.
Mike?
Yeah, so just looking at the diagram that you've provided, the lack of steepness, the more shallow slope doesn't seem to lend itself to the same kind of catastrophic ice just pouring off. So my thinking is that a lot of the ice and snow that falls on this roof is going to stay on that roof until it actually melts and then run off as water, which would mean that the drip line would be where the water comes off, as opposed to lots of snow tumbling, further than the roof line.
If I may,
Please, Mrs. Weed.
because it would be lower down, shorter, snow wouldn't have as far it wouldn't be as catastrophic, as you say. When it lands, it won't be like it's dropping, how tall is that?
24 feet.
Yeah. Less
Mr. Gorman,
drastic.
if you're done, are you done?
I'm done.
Okay, Mr. Gorman.
I think basically what the weeds are experiencing is they had that snow belt put on, that course of aluminum at the base of the roof. So the ice actually and snow accelerate off of that. by design so that you don't get ice dams.
Right.
The snow will then in turn land on this shed roof, which would be the style of roof of the carport, and likely stay there. Unless they were to put a metal roof on that shed roof, then it would avalanche into the neighbor's property. But I think provided that it's an asphalt-style roof, it will just retain most of that snow, as Michael said, and you'll just have a melt-off, so to speak, until spring. So I think the only concern for me could be the discharge of snow to the neighbor's property in the event of a metal roof. So I would probably be opposed to a metal roof on that structure, just for the sake of keeping the snow on their property, for the most part.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just for clarity for the board, this is also at this point in time, if it, depending on how the board were to approve this tonight, certainly some of the conditions they could take into consideration is, I've already heard something about, asking about if this is open-sided, so whether this be maintained that it needs to stay open-sided. And with that, I would also put that this is an unheated space, so it's not, the said snow is not going to shed off of this like it does off of the house roof where the heat, and regardless of how well insulated something is, heat loss happens and snow slides. Not as likely to happen here in this situation. So the board could take into consideration that, as well as Mr. Gorman spoke to, if this were to be a metal roof, then maybe some of the guards that David had mentioned could be required to be installed to hold the snow on that to keep it from the neighbor's property. So I think the board, if they're so inclined to approve this, can do so and address some of these concerns with some possible conditions.
I'm just trying to envision what the condition would be, an asphalt roof?
Or metal with a snow guard, which are those aluminum rails,
right.
basically.
Does this go to site plan by chance? No, right? No, I didn't think so. Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, I'm a little hesitant to tell an applicant how to build something. On the other hand, I think we could have a more general condition that it be constructed in such a fashion that the snow would not go on to the, or discharge onto the abutter's property.
And would that, for enforcement purposes, be okay from the administration's point of view?
I certainly think that's something the department could work with as the building permit is issued. This will certainly will be looking at this variance,
right.
Since we would normally not allow to issue this building permit. But if this variance were granted, we would certainly take that into consideration during the approval process.
Okay. Do you have anything else you want to add based on our conversation?
No, I hope it speaks for itself.
I think your application is very thorough, and I appreciate your comments. We'll turn now to public comments opposed to the application, if there are any. Seeing none. Public comments in support of the application, if there are any. I'm seeing none as well. So I guess at that point, we'll close the public hearing and begin our deliberations. Mr. Welch, yes.
Yeah, I'll start with item one. I can't see how this proposal is contrary to the public interest, provided concerns about snow melt going into the neighbor's property are addressed. It doesn't detract from property values. It provides for no nuisance for the neighbors. And I think we've been talking about car damage. It strikes me that this is also kind of a safety issue. You know, it would be bad to be a person walking underneath that when the snow fell. So I think it's consistent with number one.
And in a residential zone, albeit high density, I guess still a residential area, it's something that you would see normally in that neighborhood, so it's consistent with the ordinance in terms of garage or other place for a car. Mr. Gorman?
I think that it being open-sided on all sides actually helps with the public interest too. It's not like they're putting a completely enclosed structure right on their property line. They're simply trying to put cover over the roof of their cars. So it is a little bit different than like an addition or something along those lines.
And I guess to further Mike's comment, in terms of doing substantial justice, the harm to this applicant in it being denied would be significant and not outweighed by any gain to the public, I don't think, because of the reasons they explained. The safety to their property and the safety to others who are in the area, and the very minimal impact it would have on the neighbor, given the configuration of the carport and the slant of the roof. So I think the third criterion is satisfied. And I don't see any, I can't even imagine a diminution in property values based on this in terms of the neighborhood. So that's pretty much an easy one. The special condition of the lot, I would assign to the space between the home and the property line, because it's tight. And that driveway looks like it's been there for quite some time. And I think I read in the application, these folks have lived there for 30-plus years and always use that as a driveway, so, or a parking area, driveway, same thing. So I would assign the unique condition of the property to that space between the boundary line and the side of their home right there, as it shows in the picture. So I think that meets the special condition requirement of the unnecessary hardship criterion. Mr. Gorman?
As far as number 5, I would agree, Joe. I would also add that it would be sort of undue burden on the property owner their only other solution here would be to create a whole new driveway perhaps and park their cars somewhere else. But like you said, this is the way it's set up. This is what has worked for them for 30 years. And this is kind of where the carport needs to go based on the configuration of the property.
Great. And looking at the pictures, I can't imagine where else it would go.
Yep.
So I agree. Anybody else, any further comments? I think in the conversation, we've covered the criteria. I guess we can add more to it as we vote on them, if that's satisfactory to everybody. I would entertain a motion on 2328, if, Mr. Gorman.
So moved to approve 2328.
No conditions?
I would make the condition that it stay, thank you, Joe, that it stay open on the three sides, and that it has best effort to maintain the snowfall on their own property.
Okay.
Or I
If
guess
I may,
best
Mr. Chair.
construction practices, or however you want to word it.
And we just want to make it clear that this is for to have a 1-foot setback.
Yes.
On the side setback.
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion will so reflect. Is there a second? Attorney Taylor has seconded it. All right. Put my eyes on here. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those in favor? It's unanimous. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. It's unanimous. If the variance were granted, the value of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. It's unanimous. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in an unnecessary hardship because there is no fair and substantial relationship existing between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and its specific application of that provision to the property. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Do we need to do B?
We need to do
And the proposed use is a reasonable one. All those in favor? That's unanimous. On the main motion then, all those in favor of 2328 on the conditions described by Mr. Gorman, please raise your hand. That's unanimous as well. That application, sir, is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Get it done before winter.
Oh, we're trying.
Get it done before you get that new car.
We got the new
Oh,
car.
you got the new car. I know we have some new business tonight, but I can't think of what it is. I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to Mr. Gorman for serving on this board for I don't know how long he's been serving, as long as I have, I think. We're going to miss you. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, guys. Thank you. Gonna miss you guys, too.
No, you won't. You'll forget us in a week.
No, it's been fun. I mean, fun is a cautious word. but-
Challenging.
Yeah.
Fun, challenging, sure. Well, thank you very much, though. The city appreciates it, I know. And we do too. Any other new business? No? Okay. Communication, no, miscellaneous, nothing like that? I don't have any communications. If that's it, we're done.